Welcome back to the Fire Drill. Before we get started, two of our great partners, the Dormy Workshop, make artisanal, that's a word I have stolen from Alan Shipnuck, artisanal club covers. They do a bunch of other things. Great place, Dormy Workshop. Check them out. And then also Par Points, awesome app. Great new way to play and score golf. It's an awesome place. Just awesome. So please check them out. They're a great place. They also sent us a bottle of wine at Bannon, and we drank it. This week in the Fire Drill, we talked Russell Henley and his 5 wins. A, I didn't know he had 5 wins. And B, we discuss whether it's the quietest 5 wins in PGA Tour history, because that is a very small group to be a part of. And most of his wins are dominant, although this one ended like 2 or 3 strokes. He usually wins by 7. We allegedly talked about Patrick Reed and allegedly some of the things that he has allegedly done or not done. We also talked about his wife, who allegedly might be on Twitter and allegedly might be behind all of the things that are happening in the Reed compound. That's a huge allegedly. We talked about Dow Finsterwald. You might not know the name. You might know the name. I have a story about him and why it's important to me. Michael knew him and was friends with him and has some great stories. There's a Phil and Dow story in there. We talked about the Asian Tour and a $37 check. And we talked about Q School. And Jake, my producer, didn't even tell me in our recap of what we talked about, why we talked about Q School. And that's ridiculous because that's the most important thing we talk about. The Fire Drill is my favorite. I've told you that many times. I get to listen to Michael Bamberger and Alan Shipnuck tell great stories. This was no different. Without further ado, here is the 3 of us talking about golf, allegedly.
Hello, this is Alan Shipnuck back for another Fire Drill podcast. It is Sunday. That means Michael Bamberger in Philadelphia and Ryan French somewhere in the middle of America have joined us. Boys, thanks for being here.
Delighted.
Michael, Alan, Jake behind the scenes. Good to be here.
Michael usually just gives us a raised fist or something that the podcast listeners cannot hear, so I'm happy that you actually said that.
Real quickly, this is not the greatest way to start the podcast, but real quickly, Jake Muldowney is our producer, a huge Packers fan. I'm a Lions fan. Today didn't go great. Next week, Jake is going to, he usually doesn't show his face on this thing, but he's going to next week because I have an amazing Lions hat that I'm going to send him, and he's going to be on. Thanks, Jake. Love you, buddy.
Well, it's a competitive sport, being a football fan, if you're a member of the Fire Pit Collective. So let's start in Mexico at Mayakoba, because Russell Henley won. I mean, if I'm honest, I haven't thought about Russell Henley in years.
Not I at all.
Yeah, and that's no.
Well, he was. Alan, may I just interrupt for one quick second?
Yeah.
36-hole leader at the U.S. Open in San Diego. I think we all remember that.
Yeah, that was the last time I thought about him, honestly. But
great guy.
He's a super dude. I've always enjoyed talking to him. So this is his 5th career PGA Tour win. He's now headed to probably $30 or $40 million in career earnings. He's gonna have a very, very nice career. I mean, is Russell Henley the poster boy for just how good these guys are? Is this an indictment of the tour that you can go, you can go years without winning, and then all of a sudden he wins again? Like, where have you been all this time, Russell? Like, what do we make of the 5th career victory for Russell Henley?
He's a super talent. I would say he's at the Willie Wilcox level, and he's got all the shots. He's not very long, but I've watched him play. I've always enjoyed watching him play. He's a great talker, and you guys probably know the story where he DQ'd himself when he was playing with a non-conforming ball. Was this the same tournament? I think it might have been. Do you guys happen to know? Was that in Mexico? But anyway, it was one of those situations, not to get into all the details, but he was the only person who could have possibly known that he switched golf ball brands from a conforming to a non-conforming. They happened to be in his bag, and he used it. And he missed the cut. And what he said really honestly at the time was he was more afraid of how he would feel if he cheated and stayed in the tournament. He was afraid of what the long-term repercussions would be for his mind. He's a super interesting guy, and I'm couldn't be happier for him. And he's a major talent. And yes, to your point, I think it does. I think Russell Henley's occasional appearance and his ability to contend just does show you another example of how incredibly deep the PGA Tour fields are.
Yeah, I mean, I remember his first win of, God, it was like 12 years ago now in Hawaii. You know, he went 24 under. It was the second lowest score in PGA Tour history. And it was like, wow, when he was a rookie, it's like, this guy is going to be a world beater. And, you know, I think that golf course favors a certain kind of finesse player. And, you know, maybe that it was just one of those things. But I'll never forget when he came out of the box like that, you know, basically the start of his rookie year. So I'm sure Russell Henley is probably content with his career, but I've always kind of remembered that performance and thought, well, where's Russell Henley? Or I haven't thought of Russell Henley, but I don't know, Ryan, what's your take on what it means when these guys just pop up and snatch a victory and then disappear for a while? And
I think it makes me think two things. I just looked it up, but Ricky Fowler has 5 wins, right? It makes me think what marketing means, right? Like,
yeah.
I don't know if that's just personality or agent or a combination of all of those things or being in contention in majors or whatever, but they have the same amount of things. And it also makes me think, and this is me included in this group, that we underappreciate a lot of players on the PGA Tour, and Russell Henley would be amongst them. I mean, 5 wins is, in the scheme of things, you know, how long the tour has been around and how many players have 5 or more wins. It's minuscule. And, but I mean, again, this is not a shot at Russell. It's just like all of a sudden you don't really think about him for a year or 2 years or whatever, or 8 months. And then all of a sudden, boom, he wins again. I mean, it is the quietest 5 wins, one of the quietest 5 wins that I know of.
Who will win next on the PGA Tour between Russell Henley, Jonathan Bird, and Rick Fowler?
I mean,
well, I think Jonathan Bird's he's been knocking around. I don't know. You can never, that guy's just like, he's going to be 64 and he's going to be like out there on the PGA Tour somehow.
Jonathan Bird, mad respect to that guy. He pushes his own push cart at Korn Ferry Mondays. I mean, wild. I mean, I've tweeted about him many times. He's been super, super nice to me. Great dude. And I just can't believe that a man who has that many PGA Tour wins pushes his own cart at a Korn Ferry event. But
John Bird, he has 5 tour wins. Is that why you're going this direction, Michael?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, for you to say, Ryan, when you say that's a minuscule amount, I mean, it's actually somewhat substantial. I mean, there's a lot of guys who
I meant a minuscule amount of people have that many wins.
I see. I misunderstood. Yeah.
You know, and just like and this is me included, all of us. I'm not talking just the 3 people in this room. It's like we kind of underappreciate Russell Henley, right? We were talking before. It's like, I mean, he's got 5 wins. I was like, he's has 5 wins? It's like, I mean, and that is, he is in a very, very, very select group of PGA Tour players.
Well, and not only that, I mean, he led by 6 strokes through 54 holes. That's hard to do. I mean, that is a dominant performance.
Doesn't he every time he wins?
Yeah, I mean, he can go deep. And that's, I guess, my frustration is like, if you're good enough to lap the field like that, how come you can't do it more often? I mean, that's my big question. And it's not specific to Russell Henley. It's a lot of these guys. Like, if you're good enough to go that deep and completely blow away the field in over 54 holes, you know, shouldn't you be able to win 2 or 3 times a year?
I use a Graham DeLette, and Michael and I, we've talked about a lot of stuff, but we talked about Graham DeLette also. I use a quote of his a lot, and he says, you know, if you're not a top player in the world, for most guys like myself, or in this case, Russell Henley, like we have our best stuff maybe 5 times a year. And, you know, if we don't take advantage of it, we're not going to win that year because our B game and C game is not good enough to win on the PGA Tour. So, I mean, maybe he just falls into that, but his A game is ridiculous, you know?
I think it was Davis Love who said, you know, and I've heard it from a few people since, like 80% of a tour player's earnings are going to come in 20% of their starts. Like, it's kind of what you're saying, Ryan. Like, these guys, they have a handful of hot weeks, and that makes their whole season. And I don't know, they're so optimized if they want to be with the TrackMan and the sports psychologist and the nutritionist and the trainer. Like, I guess I would just expect a little more consistency week to week. I mean, like, look at Steph Curry. His numbers game in and game out are almost identical, and he's playing against different teams every night. They're designed to stop him, but he kind of maintains a very consistent performance. Now, obviously, he's one of the greatest players of all time, so maybe that's not a fair comparison. But there's that's my question, and maybe that's the ephemeral nature of sport and golf. Is why can't these guys
hold on? Ephemeral, word of the day. What does ephemeral mean?
Mysterious. Like it's that's the great mystery of sports, is why some guys can do it and some can't. Michael, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I think Russell Henley, if he were on the program right now, would tell us that he is a head case. So, Alan, everything you're describing is great if you're mentally tiger and you can just bring it every time. And if you don't have it, you'll summon something else. And Russell Henley, by his own admission, isn't built for that. There's a lot of things that go crazy weird in Russell Henley's mind. So I just don't think he's capable of it. One. Two, this conversation leads to something that I've thought about, but not really this specifically ever before. Given what you just said about the 80-20 numbers, it's amazing that the golfers don't tank like the tennis players. In other words, they grind and grind and grind and grind to make cuts and everything else. And based on 80-20, I'm not really sure why they do, but they do. And it's interesting.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a few reasons. I guess sometimes you don't know which is your week. There's a million examples of guys who barely make the cut by one stroke, and then they go really deep on the weekend and they finish T3, and that's one of their great weeks. So I mean, it's things can click with one swing or one putt. So I think that's the answer, Michael, is they don't quite know when it's coming.
Yeah,
but
right.
To be fair, and Michael knows as he's caddied, but when you're like T48 and you have no real chance of moving on Sunday, it's kind of death march is too strong of a word, but it's not a lot of fun at a PGA Tour event inside the ropes when you're like T48 on a Sunday. It's kind of like very business, like let's go home type thing.
Yeah, but I mean, like, if you just going back to the Mayakoba leaderboard, Scotty Scheffler was in 35th place.
Yes, true. Yeah,
going into Sunday, he shot 62. He's tied for third. That's FedEx Cup points. That's Ryder Cup points. That's World Ranking points. I mean, there's always something to play for.
Gives you something to work on and look forward to next time. Ryan, definitely, I've seen it, and we all know that it's true. But I think it's more common that they're going to let's see if I can find something here. Yes, there are definitely Sundays where they just grind it out and get home, but there are a lot of Sundays that they don't.
Michael, and I mean, Alan, I think, said it last week. I mean, Seamus Power is one of the most consistent players in the world right now. That dude is going to be on the Ryder Cup team. My God, every time he tees it up, he's in contention.
It's funny how his whole trajectory has really accelerated. And I mean, that Saturday 63 was nuts, right? He had an ace, he had a hole out, he had an eagle. Like, he's not only is he consistent, but he's kind of explosive. Like, the guy's got another gear. It's impressive to see a young player put it together the way he has. I agree. He's making himself a lock for Rome, which is,
and as a reminder, I said it last week, but I'll say it again. 18 months ago, I saw him on the range at a Monday Q, and he was like, "I just want to get a few more starts so I get a year added to my pension." Like, he was in a bad place. Like, oh, I'm gonna get 15 starts. I'll go back to Q school, get good Korn Ferry status, and start this whole process again. And here we are. I mean, it is wild. It's pretty wild.
All right, so Mayakoba is where a lot of golf fans are paying attention, but for you, Ryan, I know the big event is Q School. It's happening right now. It finishes on Monday when this podcast will drop. So we don't have the finished results, but set up some of the intrigue that's happening at Q School.
I will hijack the rest of this podcast because I swear I love this. Okay, real quick, Chan Kim is leading, and it would be very interesting to see. He's obviously going to get his card. He's 4 strokes ahead, and you have to finish in the top 40 to get guaranteed starts. But Chan Kim had a very good career at Arizona State and just hasn't been able to break through. Has played well, though, in a few majors. I think it was like T25 or something at the PGA Championship last year or something like that. But I think he has 7 wins in Japan and was in the top 100 in the world at one time. And I think he's like 150th now. But anyway, he is He is 4 strokes ahead, so it'll be very interesting to see. But, I mean, Chris Gotterup is up there, former NCAA champion. He's second. Chase Seifert, a veteran. Jared Sawada, here's a great story at Q School, and then I'll let you guys get back to talking. Jared Sawada played at a University of Hawaii and never had a scoring average better than 78. Like,
amazing.
He should not have even teed it up in a pro event. I mean, no one looked at his game and thought, you know what, you should go play professionally. And for 11 years, he just grinded away. And he has an amazing record that you guys probably don't know, but he's Monday qualified for the Sony Open 5 times, which is ridiculous. But he's going to get his card. I mean, he's well up the leaderboard, and that is insane. That someone who averaged basically 80 at college is going to play on the second best tour in the United States.
I love to hear that. We should at least acknowledge the legend Spencer Levine, who going into the last round he's tied for 15th. He went low on the first round. He's kind of hanging on with a couple 71s. He's dropping a little bit, but he's still there. I mean, well, Ryan, let me ask you this, because Levine pops up on Twitter and people kind of, why do we love this guy? I mean, for the fans who aren't totally tuned into the cult here.
Yeah, I mean, he is just such an honest dude. I think most people, was it the Memorial guys, Michael? Memorial, when he was like shaking in the
yes.
thing, and
yep.
He just wears his heart on his sleeve. He swears. He used to be a smoker. He hasn't smoked in a long time. But
I was going to ask, because he was one of the last guys who smoked regularly on the course.
Yep. And I think he does not. I just think he, like, everybody can relate to him in some sense. He's just a regular dude, nervous, ticky. Now he has he does the Happy Gilmore putting stroke. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous, and we all love him for it. Now, really, a very important sidebar of him getting back to tour is he's 2 cuts short of the 2 made cuts short of getting his full pension on the PGA Tour. So that dude is very motivated to get back to the tour.
What is the number you have to achieve? Do you know?
150 made cuts, and he has 148.
Yeah. 150 is a big number. And to me, it's kind of wild that it's based. I would think it'd be based on starts as opposed to made cuts.
I think there's 2 ways that you can do it. I think, but I'm not positive about that.
Yeah, we should dig into that, because that's, I know the made cuts has always loomed large, and it seems like, at IBM, it's like, how many years did you work? It's not how many computers did you sell? Like, you were there, you were punching the clock, you were part of the show, and to peg it to actually having to perform in a certain way. Maybe it's fair. Maybe it's a meritocracy. I don't know. But as the PGA Tour slides more and more to socialism, just giving out $500,000 to anyone who wants it, it's like, it's an interesting wrinkle.
Michael, your favorite Spencer Levine story?
No, I've enjoyed watching him. He ran really hot. He smoked those cigarettes right down to the nub, and I'm glad he quit smoking. It's a nasty habit, but it was kind of. I think you can still smoke on the course, because I know I've seen John Daly do it, and maybe they just don't know how to stop him.
Chan Kim is a big vapor.
Yeah. Well. Yeah.
Okay. Real quick on a guy that I posted about yesterday. His name is Chris Alago. I don't know how to say his last name, but he went bogey free, except for one hole. He shot a 74. He went bogey free and shot a 74 with a 13. That means he played the other holes 6 under. Played 17 holes 6 under and shot 74. When it first posted, it was posted as a 17 because the poor live score is this guy was peppering balls out of bounds. And I mean peppering balls out of bounds. The live scorer had no idea what had happened. Evidently, he peppered 4 OB before getting one in play.
Well, I remember when Kevin Na made his 14 at the Texas Open, and they had to have a powwow to replay all the strokes because he lost track of it. It was happening so fast, and he was he was slashing away in the forest. His caddy was rattled. Like they had to watch the tape, I think, to make sure they got it right. So I pity the score, but
yeah. Well, sometimes in a pro event when it gets a little sideways and the live score has a lot of stress. I mean, we can all sense the stress of like, what ball is that? And that is obviously like very rarely it's more than one ball.
Yeah.
I mean, this dude fired 6 off the tee. The 5th one happened to be in bounds, evidently. That dude fired 6 balls, and that live score just sweating bullets. I mean, there is no way you're not. He marked it down as a 17, and was close. It was a 13.
It's hard to keep track after a while. We've all been there. But, on the other end of a really famous one, I think the 10 that Woods made on 12 at Augusta, I think the year he was defending, so 2020, and then he went from 5 under from there to the house. I think that I put that in the pantheon of Woods activities. That's up there for me.
What Michael's talking about is the gumption to keep going.
Oh, yeah, I know.
Which is what your guy did. He kept going.
My God. Ridiculous. At Q School, I mean, the most important week of your career in some respects, right? Up until this point, 100% the most important event of your week. And you make a 13, easily could go very sideways coming in, right? Like very sideways. He played 2 under. It's awesome. It's ridiculous.
It is.
He didn't play great today, but he has an outside chance if he plays really well tomorrow to get in the top 40 and get guaranteed starts. If he does that with a 13 on the card, 100% the story of Q School. Not even close.
Yeah. That's legendary. All right, so I think we should acknowledge at this point in the podcast we're among the few people in the golf media who have not been sued by Patrick Reed yet. This is
a dicey place to go if we're trying to stay out of it.
Well, I mean, it was a big part of the week in golf. So he refiled his lawsuit. He filed against Brandel Chambly, but now he's added Eamon Lynch. Eamon loves to. He's a pot stirrer. He said some inflammatory things. I guess you could maybe like, okay, well, he's not going to win, but he might have some beef there. But then he added Doug Ferguson, of the AP. We all know Doug just plays it down the middle all the time. I mean, he's the Fred Funk of golf reporters. Like he's just the middle of the middle. He's on the sprinkler line. It's hard to imagine he said anything that would be actionable. And then who's the nicest person in the world, definitely in the golf media? It's obviously Damon Hack, right? So Damon got swept up into it. Shane Bacon,
Shane Ryan.
Yeah.
I mean, Shane wrote a whole book about it, but
yeah. I mean, so Shane, he in some ways, he kind of broke the story of Patrick Reed's, in his book, which of course got excerpted and cited many places, talking about Patrick Reed's misadventures in college and beyond. And so,
Alan, quick interruption. Did not Ian O'Connor have that first?
I'm not sure if Ian had it first. I feel like it was Shane in his book, Slaying the Tiger. I mean, there's been different parts of the story. I mean, Ian had the parents at one point, but Shane got all the Georgia teammates to really dish.
Oh, is that what it was? Okay.
Yeah.
And the Augusta State teammates and everybody.
And the Augusta State teammates. I mean, I would say Ian may have had it a little bit, but Shane advanced it in a good way. And so
very good book, by the way. Not saying it's true or it's not true. It's true. It's probably true.
Yeah.
But
it's wild. I mean, I don't know what they're and the First Amendment is such a powerful tool. It's very hard to win a libel lawsuit. I would assume that Reed and his lawyer understand that, but I guess they're trying to have some chilling effect, or maybe they're trying to make these guys' lives.
Yeah, what is the point of this? What is the point? It's not to win money because they know they can't win.
Because you got to pay for lawyers, and you start making people nervous, and no one wants to get sued. We've all, been close to it, and it's unsettling. So, I mean, he's even when Alan and I had Jeff Toobin on, and he was saying there's a legal term for this. It's a joke. It's still a lawsuit. You still require. It's still going to eat away
take time
at you,
and stress.
And you're going to need a lawyer. I would like to say this about Patrick Reed, if I may. Patrick Reed is the kindest, bravest, warmest, most wonderful human being I've ever known in my life.
And I would like to add that I have never outwardly questioned whether he may or may not have skirted the rules at a Monday qualifier. I don't believe that.
No, why would you?
Yeah, I mean, hypothetically, can you cheat at a Monday qualifier? Yes, it's relatively easy. There's no fans. There's no rules officials. There's hardly any caddies. Could you? Yes. Did he? Definitely not. The man is an upstanding citizen. It's not even close. Not even a thought in my mind. Did he hit it over in the woods and find one magically? No. He just found his ball, man.
Well, I mean, the thing is, when you keep adding more and more people to the lawsuit, it gets to be ridiculous. Like, I mean, Brandel definitely had some very strong takes. Now, it's his job to offer an opinion. Opinion is almost always protected speech. So, but that could have been spicy and a fun deconstruction. But when you add the entire press room to the lawsuit, it's kind of like, what are we doing here? So I don't know.
Why doesn't he add Ricky Fowler to it while he's at it? Because at the Albany event, if you guys remember this, and you probably do, Ricky Fowler was already in the house, and he watched a replay of it, when he grounded his club or scraped away the sand before, where he allegedly scraped away the sand before playing that shot.
I love how Mike Bamberger corrected that.
Allegedly. And
Larry Kuzman, we said allegedly. Okay, thank you. Continue, Michael.
Do you guys remember what Fowler said? He looked at it, he's like, what's even the discussion here? Obviously. It's so obvious what he did.
Yeah.
And that swayed a lot of people because Ricky Fowler knows. They all know. They know inside and out.
Well, and Cam Smith had some strong things to say, a fellow live golfer now. So it's ridiculous. But as you say, Michael, I mean, these are our colleagues. They have to defend it. They have to get a lawyer that their parent companies are part of the lawsuit. So they're sweating it. And it does create clearly some energy around it, which is, I mean, we always praise Patrick Reed lavishly. This podcast is hardly the first time.
This isn't.
Whenever we speak of him, we speak of him very highly.
Very highly.
But you can see how people it might affect their behavior. And I think that's ultimately what they're trying to accomplish here, is that when next time someone wants to drag up Patrick Reed's.
I've said this before. I don't know how the Reeds don't have a reality show, but we need it. And we need it now. Okay? Because we see public and we're like, whoa. Okay, imagine what is happening. We've all seen their house. Okay, we've all seen the pictures of the house. That about sums it up. When you're like, hey, we're gonna checkerboard everything and make it super dark goth. I mean, wild house. So, whoever's listening, that's a TV executive. Please give the Reeds.
That is great idea. Show. When we speak of the big three, the golfer, his wife, and the brother-in-law. How do you guys rank the big three for, like, if you could give truth serum to only one of them, who would you want to give it to?
The wife.
Oh, the wife. It's not even close.
It's not even close.
I mean, Justine, well, of course, we don't know it to be true that she's running the Use Golf Facts Twitter handle. Allegedly running it. She appears to be running it, but again, we have no conclusive proof of that.
All of this says that the Reeds need a reality show. Okay?
Yeah.
We'd know who runs the Twitter account. We'd see him angrily tweeting at 2 a.m. We need it all.
What I was going to say is that Twitter handle moves the needle like very few things in golf. When Justine logs on, or I'm sorry, not Justine, whoever's running that Twitter handle, we don't know it to be Justine, but we think it is, but we can't prove it. We don't know for sure, but we think it's Justine. When that person, whoever it is, logs on, like golf Twitter blows up.
It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
May I say this broadly on the subject, Alan? I think you will agree. I want to stand in praise of our close personal friend, Mark Steinberg, who did not sue us when we named an agent to a golfer named Tree Tremont in a book called The Swinger Finkelstein. And I just think that shows what a man he is, and I appreciate it, Mark. Thank you.
We're living in an alternate reality right now. It's actually kind of fun.
Yeah. Oh no, that's right. We're supposed to stay on the main road here. All right, Alan. This is a more serious question. How about you with lawyers when you were writing the Phil book? What kind of things can you talk about where things got hairy?
Yeah, I mean, the Simon & Schuster lawyers were awesome. They basically, we had a lot of conversations. They asked me about sourcing and how confident I felt in the information, and they pretty much always came down on my side. And there was a little bit of phrasing they wanted massaged, which was fine because it didn't really change the actual meaning of it. But they're used to these fights. I mean, this is what these lawyers do for a living. And while their job theoretically is to protect the publisher, they're in it because they want to take care of the writers. I mean, they're not. I don't see them as corporate stooges. Like, they're there because they care about the First Amendment. They care about the written word. They believe in.
Is the big part of it a legal side as you go through it? I mean, there's proofreading, obviously, and those kind of editing. But is
the book? Yeah, no, the legal read, absolutely. And they read it very carefully because that's their. And I already have an instinctive understanding of it, and I flagged a couple things, and it went back and forth. But there was not one thing that I wanted for the book that they said to take out, and there was a couple things that we talked over extensively, and they gave their go ahead to put in the book, and I elected not to for my own reasons. A couple of things that would have been dicey, and we would have had to rely on unnamed sources, and I just didn't want to go that route. But some very explosive material, like after talking it over, they said, yeah, approved. So I was impressed.
Alan, Phil is very well lawyered, as you know better than most. But is he litigious? Has he gone down that road at all?
He has this lawyer, Glenn Cohen, who back in the days of the Phil rumors, some of which I discuss in a sober manner in my book, they went out, they tried to find these anonymous internet trolls, and they actually did a good job of it. And they were able to shut down some of these. They were just individuals, and they basically just somehow got their identity from the servers, and they were able to threaten them and make them go away, which was their ultimate goal. But no, that they did file a lawsuit in Canadian court, and that was trying to unmask one of these anonymous posters, and they succeeded in doing that. But that's really been the extent of it. And I talked to Cohen extensively, and then Phil had another lawyer from San Diego who got involved, and we had some conversations. So yeah, he's definitely lawyered up, but especially the guy in San Diego was pretty sophisticated. I mean, he seemed to understand, like, okay, we can't really win a First Amendment case, so let me just try and influence things on the margins. But there's a little good cop, bad cop between the two different lawyers. But no, I mean, given everything that swirled around the Mickelsons over the decades, they have not elected to go to the courts, which is interesting. Of course, when you do that, as Patrick Reed's going to find out, the other side gets to, they get to ask the questions too, and you're under oath. So now, I think ultimately, in Phil's case, it's not worth the risk of discovery. Like, if he wants to challenge people, then he's going to get challenged. And I think he knows, there's some things I don't want to come to light. Patrick Reed may find out the same thing. There's a term for this, fuck around and find out. And that may happen to Patrick Reed. This is basically he's kind of trying to hole 70 footers, right? And he might run a few off the green, to use a golf metaphor. Like he's gonna there's gonna be some blowback to this when because not only did he sue the individuals, he also sued the parent companies, and they have resources, and they have people who've been doing this a long time. So they're going to now go after him, and he may regret going down this road.
I was once with Trump at the West Palm Beach course, and the Golf Digest ranking had just come out, and of course he wanted to be in the top 100. And as he told the story, that he was number 101 on the list, and so he started writing his own brief, his own legal brief about why Golf Digest had screwed him over. And of course, he would just submit that to his lawyer and have the lawyer file something, a totally, completely frivolous act that would go nowhere. But then that requires Golf Digest to defend its process. How do we make the list and go through a whole thing that nobody wants to waste their time doing?
Yeah. Well, for Trump, it's a PR exercise, right? So he's trying to defend his golf courses, and for him, that was worth paying the lawyer $1,000 in fees, or maybe not paying him. We know Trump's history of not paying his lawyers, but Patrick Reed's getting a lot of billable hours, and maybe he thinks that somehow he's going to launder his reputation here. But I think it's more about trying to have this
I
chilling
think
effect.
That might be the wildest part of this, right? Like, that's the only reason that you do this. You know, for the most part, it's going to be hard to, almost impossible to win. He must think that this is going to, like, prove that he's just this upstanding person. And that is the wildest take of all of this, right? Like, he's at home thinking, like, man, really, I've done it now. Him and Justine are like, yeah, look at what we've done. We're going to get everybody on our side. Like, that is the craziest part of all of this, right? Like, that they think that this is somehow, like, fixing a reputation. Like, this is making it worse.
The craziest part is it shows you how completely out of whack all of golf is now. I mean, like, this has become a routine thing that Patrick Reed is suing somebody for something, and I don't know. Golf used to be a place where
there's a lot of lawyers getting very wealthy on golf this year. Very wealthy.
People used to just settle their differences quietly. It was just, it's just another indication of what turmoil the game is in. The fact that these suits are happening in the first place. And, a more aggressive kind of reporting of golf is certainly part of it. Speaking of that, if I may, Alan, unless you tell me if this is not an appropriate thing to bring up, but, these Bubba Watson comments about, of course, we got endorsement money, if we got money for showing up at cocktail parties and all the rest. That was something like everybody seemed to know forever. Nobody ever really wrote about it. And now it's out there. And, of course, it's out there because Bubba's not on the PGA Tour. He's probably never going to play the PGA Tour again, except for, the Masters and a couple other things. It's just, I put that in this broadly the same category as Patrick Reed. It's like there were all these old systems in place, for good or for bad. You could definitely argue it both ways, and they're crumbling.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that Reed is only filed these lawsuits since he joined Live Golf. And we know that Live is fueled by Saudi money and grievance. Those are the two rocket fuels, right? And so I guess when he was on the PGA Tour, he was still trying to play nice, and now he's like, screw it. I've gone to the dark side, so might as well just let it rip. But in Reed's case, Doug Ferguson and Eamon Lynch and Damon Hack and Brandel Chambly are going to be reporting on and talking about his career for the next 10 or 15 years. Like, would you really, on just a very basic level, do you want the people who are going to help assign your legacy on some level, do you want to make all of them mad at you? It doesn't seem like it's the opposite of a charm offensive, but whatever.
There's a 0.0 chance that he's going to find anything that Doug Ferguson did that was with malice. It would be unlikely you could find anything that Doug Ferguson wrote that's even inaccurate. But if it's, for those who don't know that, if it's inaccurate but not with malice, you weren't willfully trying to defame the person or slander the person or hurt the person in some way, that's what constitutes libel. There's a 0.0 chance that Doug Ferguson would be capable of it. He's just too well trained and too professional. I mean, I would say this of the entire group, but Doug, I know best.
Yeah.
Yeah. Shane Ryan said in the tweet that, he said, I can't say anything about it, but I 100% stand behind my reporting. So he's obviously confident.
Well, and of course, it's all going to get dredged up again. So here we go. Like, people haven't thought about Shane's book in a long time, right? Now it's going to be everywhere.
He put the link. I mean, smart of him, because it's a good book too, is he put the link in his tweet. He's like, hey, I can't talk about it if you'd like to read about it.
that's genius. I mean, that's so great. And it's kind of like a question that hangs over Live Golf. Like, are they actually sports washing? Because most golf fans have never really thought about the nefarious influence of Saudi Arabia on our lives and our geopolitics, right? It just wasn't something that the average golf fan really thought about. Now it's talked about every day, every week, every podcast. Like, in some ways, they've called more attention to themselves and their misdeeds. Like, what is the opposite of sports washing? It's and that's what Reed's doing with this lawsuit.
And it's changed the attitude, because back to Michael's point about what Bubba said, I've heard that. I assume you guys have heard that way more than I, that, so-and-so player doesn't want to play in the 3M and the PGA Tour can't do appearance fees. So some sponsor pays so-and-so $300,000 to show up at a cocktail party. And it's relatively regularly happening. And so you skirt the rules of an appearance fee and blah, blah, blah. Like, that is huge news. And it has become so like they've like this negativity towards them that it kind of was like, oh, there's Bubba crying again. Like, it wasn't really, it was like, that is what's happening on the PGA Tour. Like, that is happening. But the negativity of these things is just not, is getting kind of like tiresome at some point, like that should have been a huge story in my opinion. I mean, it is.
Alan, what's your impression? Why would Bubba go down that road? What's to be gained?
It's an unburdening. You see this from a lot of the live guys. And I've had a lot of them tell me a lot of things about Rory McIlroy and his finances and his ties to the tour, because they're tired of Rory being held up as his savior and this guy who's doing it all for the good of the game, where, and the things they've told me have checked out. It's like the PGA Tour's made a lot of money for Rory. And so, and one of the live guys said he's bought and sold more than any of us, but people just don't know about it. And so this will all be in my forthcoming book, by the way. But so it's like, I don't have a link yet, Shane. Sorry. But, there's
no, Shane's happy.
Yeah, that's right. So yeah, I mean, the live guys are tired of being picked on, right? They very well cultivated this victimhood. And so it's just a chance to like fire back. And, but yeah, I mean, there's tournaments where
Alan, you have people saying negative things about Rory McIlroy.
Yes, the live guys are.
Do they not know that Rory McIlroy is the kindest, bravest, warmest, most wonderful human being I've
behind Patrick Reed, second behind Patrick Reed.
It starts at the top with Greg Norman. We know that he's a vengeful personality, and that's trickled down to the entire organization. So the gloves are off. I mean, we've seen that all year long, and it's all is being revealed. And so yeah, I mean, what Bubba said, it was certainly factual. I mean, there's tournaments where it's known, like, just go when you fly in on your jet, just go fill it up down there. Put $40,000 of jet fuel, and just put it on the tournament tab. There's all kinds of little things like that have been done to entice players, and it's not even really an open secret. It's just a known thing in the golf world. But I don't know why it wasn't discussed. But Bubba's sort of torn the Band-Aid off, and there's more reporting to do there for sure.
Okay, quickly, no one wanted to talk about the Asian Tour. We brought up what we wanted to talk
That's
about.
Not true.
These guys were
Asian
like,
Tour
no one's put up the senior tour where Bernhard Langer at age 65
ridiculous.
won by.
I mean, my tweet yesterday was, at 103, Bernhard Langer is probably going to win the Charles Schwab Cup. The man does not age. He does not age.
It's incredible. Yeah,
It actually, truly is incredible.
It is.
Also,
it's no joke.
The swing does not need to be pretty to be effective, because the swing is not pretty. It is effective.
Neither is the putting stroke, but he just gets it done.
Now, to be fair, underneath my tweet, there was some very angry people about the fact that he anchors. I mean, he's like, he could play till 103 if he keeps anchoring.
They think that his hand is touching his chest when he's putting.
Yeah. They're just angry.
I mean, I'm sure that's done in tournament golf at various places, but Langer seems like such a black and white personality. I don't believe that he would do that. I really don't.
I agree. It is ridiculous that he won again. Ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And Steve Alker, how about making double on the 16th or 15th hole to lose $1 million? Aye.
Right, and that's real money for a guy like that. $1 million is theoretical, legit, for some of these dudes, but that's real money.
That's real money.
So let's talk about the Asian Tour.
Okay,
Brian.
How do you say his last name? Jazz?
I just call him Jazz.
It's Jazz, exactly.
Okay. Quick story about Jazz. I, in middle of COVID, my wife and I, for some reason, decided that we'd drive down to my brother's house in Florida. He has a vacation home in Florida. We made the 20-hour trip from Chicago and got there. This is like full-blown middle of COVID, like everything shut down. West Florida tour had just started back up. So, and they were like an hour down the road from my brother's house. I get in the car. I drive to the West Florida tournament. Now, I knew that Daniel Chopra, PGA Tour winner, multi-time PGA Tour winner, played in West Florida event. He pulls up in his Lamborghini, and out jumps Jazz. And Jazz at the time was 36th player in the entire world, but didn't have any place to play. The Asian Tour was shut down. and played West Florida tournament. In that event, finished I'm just going to make this up. I don't know what it was, T11 or something, and got a check for $37.13. And it makes my day. It just makes my day. The man who's 36 in the world got a check for $37. What does he do with it? What did Jazz cash the $37 check? Yes or no?
Oh, of course. Well, that was wasn't it Mad? No, what was the Graydon Carter magazine, Michael? That
Spy
magazine. They had this bit going for a long time where they sent celebrities checks in increasingly small amounts. It would start with 18, and then it would get down to 12, and then it would get down to
see if they cashed
7.
it.
And they kept track of who cashed it, and most of them didn't at all, or they stopped after the first one. The one guy who cashed every single check was Donald Trump. This was decades ago, but it's a famous bit.
Oh my God, that's amazing. I mean, it just made there was no one on the course, and it was and I think he was 35th or 36th at the time, and playing in a cart, not a single fan around. And he finished T11 or something like that, and got a check for $37.
How about Daniel Chopra rocking up in a Lamborghini? I mean,
Daniel
he had a nice career, but it
hashtag thank you, Tiger.
Well, right. I was going to say, this circles back to the Russell Henley conversation. Daniel Chopra, very good golfer, had a nice little career, but driving a Lamborghini, it's wild.
Okay. Here is now. This is important from the standpoint of what this leaderboard had. David Puig on it, finished third. Scott Vincent, live player. Barn Rat, who's made all of a sudden playing well in Asia, finished fifth. Eric Compton finished ninth. Chase Koepka 11th. I mean, it is a live. I mean, what a leaderboard this was.
Right. Well, I mean, yeah, as a lot of those names are playing live golf, and I mean, we've talked about it in previous podcasts, but the Asian Tour is a very important part of the vision for live as a feeder system, as a landing spot for guys who get relegated, as a way to develop their next generation of players. So I think it's only going to accelerate. The everyday Asian Tour events are going to just get better and better. And when it surpasses the European Tour, it seems like it's only a question of when, as far as strength of fields and world ranking points and money and those things. It's the balance of power is definitely shifting.
What's to prevent the Asian Tour from staging those tournaments in the United States and other places?
They're having a Q school in the U.S., Michael, this year. Yeah. They're coming.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, as the PGA Tour keeps expanding and playing overseas, I think it's more like a gentleman's agreement. And as we were saying earlier in this podcast, all that stuff's out the window now. It's brass knuckles time. So
yeah, there's no gentleman anything.
But yeah, I mean, Live Golf's playing most of their events over here, so maybe the Asian Tour will tack a few on too, just for fun. I do want to let the listeners know that here at the Fire Pit Collective, we are expanding our podcast network, and we already have the Fire Pit podcast, which is really Matt Chanella's baby, and those are kind of narrative and long form. We have Grassroots with Laz Versailles and John Nichols, and they get into the culture. Ryan has his podcast, which is obviously focused more on the grinders and the dreamers. We have these fire drills, which are big events, breaking news, and kind of now the weekly ebb and flow of what's happening in golf. But we were delighted to announce that we're going to have a new one called Need a Fourth, and it's Bamberger, myself, and a guy named Jeff Ogilvie, and we take turns inviting guests. One person organizes a guest. The other two co-hosts do not know who that person is until they show up on their screen here. And yes, if you're a fan of the Smartless podcast, and most of us are, we shamelessly stole their idea, but it's just so much fun. And so we're going to start rolling those out this coming Thursday, and they'll be weekly for a while, and hoping to get people excited about it. We've already taped a bunch of them now, and the guests are A+, and it's, those of us who've listened, or those of you who have listened to the fire drills, and even for Michael and I, with Ogilvie, he's such a great talker and thinker, and so it's a delight to have him as part of this. And
he is amazing. They're really, really fun.
They're really fun. So we'll be doing a little promotion on the various socials throughout this week to remind folks. But we're excited about that, and we've been talking about this and working on it for a while. So it's going to be neat to set it free out into the world.
Ryan, how are you going to monitor Monday, and what do you do? Do you follow it on a computer? I imagine, or there's no live coverage?
Tomorrow is a pretty big day for me. The final day of Q School, and it also, in return, makes for a good Monday story often because a lot of the guys who are normally at Mondays are in Q School. So usually some great stories get through the Monday down in Houston. So Mondays are always great, let's be honest. But this is an exceptional Monday.
Yep. Well, Alan, I would just wrap for myself, and anyone who knew the man would feel exactly the same way. But a fond farewell to a real great gent of golf, Dow Finsterwald. I would say I knew him quite well. Definitely one of my go-to guys, like Bob Golby was, and others of that generation. Great friend of Arnold Palmer. He had something Tom Watson did not win in the PGA Championship, and had a beautiful swing and carried himself with a lot of class for a long career. So farewell to Dow.
I mean, he was a rules official at the Masters for years. I mean, it's pretty neat. Like, I kind of dream about, I coach high school basketball, and at some point I'm going to become a referee, because I feel like the on the girls' side, they need better refs. And it's kind of analogous. You go from playing the Masters to being a rules official. It's kind of a cool journey. And I'd see him, and he carried himself with such dignity, and everyone seemed to love the guy. And he was always in these rapt conversations out on the golf course or under the tree. And I never really knew him. I just knew of him, but he had a very palpable presence. So I'm glad you tipped your cap to him, Mike.
Yeah. Now, Alan, I remember you asking for his number a while back. Did you reach him on that occasion?
I
was
did
probably
not.
ill. Yeah, he was. I'm sure he struggled some at the end. That was fairly recently.
Well, and that was for the Phil book, because this is a story that's going to go to the grave with Dow. But there was some dust up, but that Dow got involved with Phil out on the golf course, and he was the only guy who could really tell it. So that'll remain
very,
a mystery.
very, very discreet.
Yeah,
he had a thing with Arnold where they would be in Arnold's garage at Arnold's really quite modest townhouse condo at Bay Hill, and they'd be looking at their watches, 4:58, 4:59. Right at 5 o'clock, they would open that little mini fridge, and the first beer would come out. They just had their rituals, and they just belong completely to another era where, it's easy to romanticize, but on the other hand, it is romantic, where it was really about the camaraderie and the friendship and trying to beat each other on the golf course, but still liking one another when you came off the course, which, of course, I would say, we're missing now, which is a shame. It's the usual thing that money does wherever grotesque large sums of money show up. But anyway, Dow was a gent. I'm gonna tell a story in print about Dow at the Masters in a couple of days, just along the lines of what you were saying. Some people, very, very briefly, some people wouldn't know that Dow was contending and might have won a Masters one year, but got a penalty for practice putting between holes. And I don't remember the details right now, but I'll look that up as well. But he was a hell of a player, and he won 12 times and won a PGA Championship.
So here is my only thing I know about Dow is, and obviously it's changed now, but if you look up, everybody asks me about status all the time and how the rankings work and how status works. And Dow was the first person, for some reason, I don't know if it was alphabetical or whatever, the first person on every status. Like if you look up all the rankings of players that are eligible for PGA Tour events, like Jack is up there, and because you meet a certain criteria of life, and Dow was always listed number one. Like he was still eligible at 90. He could have played an event if he wanted to.
No way.
It might relate to the year he won that PGA Championship. It was the first year after they went from match play back to stroke play.
Yeah, some time a rule changed and players got grandfathered out. But those guys, some of those guys are still in. So
the guys who won the PGA Championship were grandfathered in, and that's how I believe Jerry Barber.
So he was listed number one. He was he could have been the first person in any PGA Tour field, and I just wanted so badly for the night get Dow to go, you know what? I am going to play the Memorial this year.
Or more like Bermuda, right?
I am going to play the Barracuda Classic this year.
I love that. This has been a fun conversation as always with the usual diversions. But tip of the cap to Russell Henley, Dal Finsterwall, Patrick Reed, Shane Ryan, Justine Reed, and various others who made an appearance on this pod. So another fire drill is in the books. We will keep doing these every Sunday. And for Michael Bamberger and Ryan French, I'm Alan Shipnuck. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back in your ear soon.